It was the smell of roses that warned me first, roses and hairspray drifting across the pasture on a hot breeze, not the usual scent on my Texas ranch. From the porch, coffee in hand, I spotted them, clusters of overdressed strangers wobbling through tall grass, their laughter floating over the fence line. A woman in stilettos tripped and fell flat on her back, and not far behind her, two men in tuxedos carried folding chairs like they were crossing the Sahara. At the heart of it all, like two ancient gods surveying their domain, stood Duke and Diesel, my 2,000-pound Angus bulls, watching the human invasion with expressions that could only be called amused. White satin ribbons streamed from a newly built gazebo like surrender flags. I hadn't put it there. The structure had appeared on my land days ago, built without my consent, planted like a flag in some old western land grab. Now those same pretty ribbons were being trampled by 1,200 pounds of pure black beef. I leaned against the railing and took a long, slow sip of my coffee. Some people say karma takes its time. I say sometimes it charges in with horns. I'm Robert Garrison. I've owned the Double Oak Ranch for 15 years, 300 acres of prime grazing land left to me by my grandfather. On one side, it borders Meadowview Estates, a suburban sprawl of plastic smiles and HOA bylaws. When I inherited the ranch, Meadowview had maybe 20 houses. Now it's a sea of vinyl siding and lawn ornaments, ruled with an iron clipboard by Karen Peton. Karen moved in from California 5 years ago. Within months, she muscled onto the HOA board, within a year, she was president. Since then, she's turned that neighborhood into her personal empire, measuring grass blades, fining residents over mailbox hues, and issuing warnings for wind chimes. Our first clash came when she sent a certified letter demanding I repaint my 1952 barn because it was an eyesore, visible from several Meadowview properties. That barn's a quarter-mile from the property line. I framed her letter. Things spiraled after that. She tried to get the county to shut down my compost bins, filed noise complaints about my roosters, and started a petition to rezone my property as residential to force out my livestock. The county laughed her out, but it showed me who I was dealing with. Then came the gazebo. 3 weeks back, I spotted a surveyor pacing the edge of my land. He said Karen had hired him for a community project. I showed him my own survey, and he left. A week later, I found Karen herself in my pasture with a clipboard, pink blazer, and absurd high-heeled boots. She claimed they were planning a wedding, Judge Weatherby's daughter, and that my field was perfect for it. I told her to leave. She waved it off, called my bulls cows, and insisted I find them somewhere else for just one tiny day. I told her no. She left, muttering about people who lacked community spirit. 4 days later, hammering woke me. I found a full construction crew erecting a fancy gazebo in my east pasture, octagonal, with lattice and benches, the kind you see in bridal magazines. I confronted the foreman. He showed me a work order signed by Karen for the HOA. I told him he was trespassing. He looked shocked, said Karen told him everything was legal. By the time the sheriff arrived, the gazebo was finished. Deputy Morrison said it was now a civil issue. Karen showed up later that night, flanked by 2 HOA board members, folder in hand, fake smile firmly in place. She gave me a speech about neighborly cooperation. I gave her a deadline, 48 hours to remove the gazebo or face legal action. She laughed and said, "Surely you wouldn't ruin a young couple's special day over a little misunderstanding." I asked if she had permits. Her smile cracked. "It's temporary," she claimed. "The HOA doesn't need permits." I reminded her she did when building on someone else's private land. She still didn't back down, her ego was too deep in it. The wedding was scheduled. She assumed I'd fold, that I'd be afraid of bad press. I smiled and said, "You're right, it's not complicated." The next morning, I called my lawyer, who confirmed I had every right to use my land. Then my insurance agent, who assured me I wouldn't be liable if anyone got hurt while trespassing. Last, I called Miguel, my ranch hand. I told him to move the bulls early. Duke and Diesel are not ordinary animals. They're registered black Angus, worth $30,000 each, big, territorial, and restless after days in the holding paddock. I opened the fence Friday afternoon, posted fresh, no trespassing and livestock area, enter at your own risk signs, then waited. Saturday dawned warm and clear. By noon, guests arrived, stepping onto my land like it was theirs. Tables and chairs were set up, a string quartet tuning, Karen prancing around in a purple designer dress. The bride arrived at 2 o'clock, lovely, innocent. I almost felt bad. Almost. At 2:25, I opened the gate. Duke emerged first, nostrils flaring. Diesel followed, tail twitching. They saw the crowd and charged. A violinist dropped her instrument and pointed. The screams began. Guests ran in every direction. One man used a cello as a pole vault. Elderly women hiked up their dresses and sprinted. A photographer kept snapping pictures even as he fled. Diesel found the catering table. Duke lowered his head and slammed the gazebo, shaking it to the foundation. Karen stood frozen, speechless. The bride fled, veil streaming behind her. The officiant vanished. Later, I'd learn he climbed a tree. 5 minutes later, the pasture was empty except for Duke and Diesel, chewing cud among the wreckage. Diesel wore a wedding veil like a crown. Duke stood beside the half-collapsed gazebo, looking proud. Then came Karen's scream. She marched to the fence, purple dress in tatters, grass in her hair, finger trembling as she pointed. You did this on purpose. You ruined everything. I strolled down from the porch, calm as could be. Karen, I said, I warned you this was an active pasture. You trespassed, built without permits. These are the consequences. Deputy Morrison returned, followed by 2 more sheriff's cars. Guests had called 911, claiming a bull attack. Karen demanded I be arrested for unleashing dangerous animals. She ranted about lawsuits and ruined weddings. The deputy listened, then asked for my side. I showed him signs, photos, and documentation. He turned back to Karen. Ma'am, he said, this is criminal trespass and a code violation. The property owner has the right to graze livestock on his land. You had no authority to use it. Karen's face drained of color. But the wedding, she whispered, Judge Weatherby's daughter. Should have thought of that before you trespassed, the deputy replied. I agreed not to press charges on one condition, remove the structure and repair my property. One of her board members, Janet, a reasonable woman, gently pulled Karen aside and whispered to her. Karen didn't argue again. The next morning, a crew arrived to dismantle the gazebo and clean up. Duke and Diesel were reluctant to leave their battlefield. By then, a video of the incident, titled Bulls Crash Texas Wedding, had gone viral. Word spread fast in Meadowview. The emergency HOA meeting that Tuesday was packed. Judge Weatherby showed up, furious, blaming Karen for everything. The HOA's insurance company had already called, they were on the hook if I sued. Karen was voted out unanimously. But it didn't stop there. The newlyweds sued Karen personally for ruining their wedding. The caterer sued for damages. The musicians claimed trauma. Even the photographer filed, saying he now feared livestock. Total damages, over $200,000. Karen settled quietly, liquidating her savings. Then the Bar Association opened an investigation into her license. Turns out, claiming legal authority she didn't have wasn't a good look. The last time I saw her, she was at the courthouse, paying $25,000 in fines. Her strut was gone, replaced by a weary shuffle. When she saw me, she blushed but said nothing. Justice doesn't always wear robes. Sometimes it wears horns. If watching HOA arrogance get trampled by 2,000 pounds of Angus, justice made your day, go ahead and hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more true tales where the good guys win, the bulls don't back down, and karma always finds its way across the fence.